So hey, I'm Chisa, this is Justin. We wanted to do a review of our experience at the Grace Hopper celebration a couple weeks ago. We kind of wanted to share some things that we learned, and the topic that we've kind of developed based on the conversation we want to have is why it's important to be a member of the majority in a crowd of the minority. And it'll be in the form of myself interviewing Justin about his experience at the Grace Hopper conference. Let's start by talking about what Grace Hopper is. It's a conference for everybody, but it is geared towards women in technology. So Justin was one of the few cisgendered males from ThoughtWorks that attended this conference with a group of mostly women or non-binary people. My first question for you is, what were your initial thoughts about the conference? Like, what were you expecting? You kind of told us your definition of what it was, but what were you expecting when you went there?
Yeah, so going in, I was really curious as to why I was there. I was invited to go, and I first thought to myself, well, is this a space for me? Like, should I go? I think it's a great idea, and it's something that I support, but like, do I need to be there physically and visibly? And after I thought about it, I felt like it was something that would be great for me to see, and I felt like I just had to approach it from the right standpoint. So beforehand, we even had a meeting of ThoughtWorks males and about what it means to be a male at this conference. So we talked a lot about how to approach certain spaces and how to be there and listen and not necessarily impose yourself.
Yeah. You learned, what would you say like were the things that you learned while at the conference?
I'd say I definitely learned the value of listening. I felt like I spent a lot more of my time listening to people than always talking. And I felt like though I was contributing, it was important to kind of just hear what was going on and gain experience of what it was like to feel like an other. Most of my day being a male, black male, I'm a minority in some spaces, but being a male, I'm a majority in a lot of spaces, particularly in IT. So being in that space and realizing that the shoe is now on the other foot and understanding what it's like to not always have others that look like you was something that was very formative for me and caused me to think about things differently.
Like, how did that feel?
I thought a lot more before I spoke about things. Not like I was going to say something offensive, but it was just like, well, usually if I say this, people will take it one way, but if I say it in this context, it may not be understood what I'm trying to say. So I felt like I second-guessed myself a lot more than I might have. But I felt really comfortable at a certain point because I think the women that were there seemed to be happy I was there and supported me being there. Although I stood out clearly. Even when I walked the halls, people looked at me like, what is this guy doing here? But I don't think people made me feel uncomfortable because I was still welcome.
Yeah, and then we talked about this earlier, but you kind of mentioned that you wanted to discuss intersectionality and that there was a situation with like the bathrooms. Can you kind of tell me a little bit more about what happened and what you meant by that? And...
Yeah, I went to the bathroom and I saw there was a men and women's bathroom. So I saw the women's bathroom, and the line was probably the longest line I've ever seen for any sporting event. It was probably 50 deep from the bathroom, and I don't know how long it was inside the bathroom. It was pretty empty in the men's line. So I walk in, there are maybe 4 or 3 people in total. All 4 of us guys looked at each other like, this is interesting. Like, why are we the only people in the bathroom? And someone broke the ice and said, well, you know, if there were a sign that said men's room that way and we had to walk, I'd be okay with that. And I think we all kind of agreed that in this space, like, it's not really, things don't need to be easier for us. I mean, the line was extremely long, and if women need to use the bathroom, they should. But it got extra interesting when we were part of the conference and on the conference floor, and I went to the bathroom, and in this bathroom setting, there was a women's bathroom and a gender-neutral bathroom.
Go ahead.
So for me, that's something I'd never really experienced so explicitly. I mean, we all have gender-neutral bathrooms in our homes, and at many clubs you may go to or restaurants, it's also the same. Yeah, I walked into the bathroom, it was empty, and I go ahead, I use it, and I'm washing my hands, and then someone starts talking to me. And they say, hey, do you know what the paper towels are? I look up, and it's a woman. So, so that was very new for me, and I wasn't as uncomfortable as I thought I would be. And I kind of smiled at the situation and realized, well, you know, there's nothing to really be afraid of. She's just asked me a question, so then we talked and we had a nice conversation and walked out together. So, yeah, I think definitely it broke down some barriers for me about what it means to use a bathroom and like whose space it is, and the fact that, you know, the bathroom I was a visitor in that space, even though something as basic as using a bathroom is something that people take for granted. One
thing that was really interesting was just the way that so many things kind of got flipped. When I'm in a crowd, I have to think about what I'm saying. I have to think about how I'm going to be received, because when you're one of the few It's almost as though when you say something, the impact that your words or your actions have are much larger. You're not one of the crowd, you stand out. So when something that stands out does something, it's more impactful, whether it be in a positive or negative light, and you feel like you're a little bit more under the microscope. Whereas when you're a part of a crowd of everyone that's like you don't have to think as hard, and there aren't these additional unspoken responsibilities on you. Most of the spaces that we have aren't really safe spaces for women, especially in technology, right? There's an extra step that needs to be taken and something extra needs to be thought of. And then when you're at a conference where everything's kind of geared towards women, it's just an interesting kind of turn of the head. You also mentioned a conversation that we had at dinner. It was a group of thought workers. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. So we were at a dinner after a day at the conference, and a lot of women at the table were speaking. I was the only male, and a lot of women were speaking about the fact of how difficult it is to be in the IT industry, and how the way they may act is misperceived by many of their male coworkers. Every day is somewhat of a struggle because you feel out of place. And being in that moment at that table, I was certainly out of place as a male. It was great because I just didn't really say a whole lot. There were things I wanted to say, but I felt like if what I was going to say is something that's being said and it wasn't really adding to the conversation, well, there's no need for me to insert myself there. I felt like that conversation was a lot more about the women at the table. And I did participate, but I felt like it was much more important of an experience for those to support one another, talk things out, and get things off their chest.
I kind of feel like one thing that's interesting too is in the workplace, I feel like guys can have conversations like that all the time. Because like they can go off and like basically have a conversation around the water cooler, but if there just aren't that many of you, if you don't have people who understand your narrative, like there's no one to discuss the story with.
I think the difficulty in the workplace is that if you're in mixed company, you'll also have a bunch of men who will mansplain something. So it's like a woman is there talking about their experience and how things are, and you have a guy say, oh, well, you know, it's not really that bad, or I think you're just blowing it out of proportion.
So yeah, and I think that goes a long way to talk about the importance of representation, not just on teams, but decision-making bodies, period. It's really hard to synthesize or recreate something, and you lose a huge amount of authenticity when the right people aren't at the table. And if you're trying to create a diverse space, you need representation in that space for it to truly be diverse. Why do you think it's important for members of the majority to be in a crowd of minorities? In a situation where you understand not only what it feels like to be a minority, but to understand their perspective.
To put it simply, I think in the workplace and life, we all have to make decisions. If we can't make those decisions understanding the implications of them, then they won't be good decisions. We all need to empathize with others. I can never understand what it's like to be a woman. You know, I'm never going to understand that fully. But I can put myself in situations so that I can empathize and understand how the world affects women, how I affect women, and how we all coexist. If we don't put ourselves in that situation and put the shoe on the other foot, then I feel like we're just going to make bad decisions in our lives.
It's really hard to quantify or understand that impact. What's the best advice that you would give to someone who's having a difficulty like figuring out how do you just put on a hat without intruding on another space?
I think you just do a lot more listening than talking, to be honest. So for example, in teams, I'll notice that somebody's extra quiet. And sometimes it ends up being a woman, sometimes it ends up being another person who's just quiet. But being able to understand that, okay, I need to help them speak. I shouldn't speak for them, but like create a space where they feel comfortable. Just be aware of your surroundings, be aware of how people are contributing to a team and understand their potential and perhaps how they're not meeting it.
And this wasn't meant to be a prescriptive video. It was really more so just a chance for us to share some of our thoughts coming off of Grace Hopper, because I think that we both kind of had a couple aha moments while attending, just in terms of the way that we looked at things and the way that we thought about things, and it was really a kind of great experience. If you have any questions, I'll make sure to include our contact information. That's basically it. Do you have anything else you want to...
No, that's it. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it, Chisa. Anytime.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right, catch you later. Bye.